The U.S. Congress and Nebraska Legislature passed civil rights laws in the 1960s, a sequence of federal and state actions that intertwined. This critique examines the bills, naming each one, passed by both bodies, questioning the motives and consequences of legislation that reshaped America and its heartland. In the 1960s, America's political class fell headfirst into a trap laid by race grifters, civil rights fraudsters, and closet communists masquerading as do-gooders. The U.S. Congress, in a fit of self-righteous stupidity, passed sweeping legislation that promised equality but delivered chaos. Bills that were nothing more than feel-good Trojan horses for anti-American agendas. Nebraska's legislature, ever the obedient lapdog, followed suit, copying the feds with its own civil rights laws, bowing to the same subversive nonsense without even the dignity of a bribe to excuse their idiocy. History will remember these lawmakers, federal and Cornhusker alike, as fools who traded their nation's future for applause from the gullible, leaving their grandchildren to inherit a wreckage. The U.S. Congress kicked off this debacle with the Civil Rights Act of 1964, signed into law on July 2, 1964. Title VII of that bill, the crown jewel of this legislative disaster, banned employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. Sounds noble until you realize it was a battering ram for centralized control and a stepping stone to dismantle meritocracy. Not satisfied with meddling in workplaces, Congress doubled down with the Fair Housing Act of 1968, part of the broader Civil Rights Act of 1968, signed on April 11, 1968. This gem outlawed housing discrimination, paving the way for forced integration and the erosion of property rights, all under the guise of fairness. These bills weren't about helping anyone. They were communist-inspired tools to undermine America's foundations, dressed up as moral triumphs. Enter Nebraska, the Midwest poster child for spineless conformity. In 1965, the Nebraska Legislature aped Congress with Legislative Bill 656, the so-called Nebraska Fair Employment Practice Act. Passed just months after the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1964, it mirrored Title VII's employment provisions, setting up the Nebraska Equal Opportunity Commission, NEOC, to parrot the EOC's meddling. Then, in 1969, Nebraska's lawmakers, still drooling over the Fed's playbook, expanded their civil rights farce with legislation that added housing and public accommodations to the NEOC's reach, copying the Fair Housing Act of 1968 beat for beat. No originality, no resistance, just slavish devotion to a national trend peddled by grifters and frauds. Let's call it what it was. Nebraska didn't lead, it followed. The U.S. Congress, stuffed with dimwits chasing votes and payoffs, pushed these bills for political gain and financial kickbacks from the bleeding heart lobby. Nebraska's legislators? They weren't even smart enough to cash in. They passed their copycat laws, LB 656 and 65, and the 69 expansion, out of sheer stupidity, desperate to look compassionate and progressive. These white fool idiots thought they were polishing their halos, but they were just hammering nails into America's coffin. The civil rights charade was never about equality. It was subversive communist legislation, plain and simple. It handed power to bureaucrats, silenced dissent, and turned a nation of rugged individuals into a playground for grievance mongers. The federal bills opened the floodgates. Nebraska's echoes locked the cage. Today, we see the wreckage. A society choking on red tape, division, and entitlement, all thanks to those 60s clowns who couldn't spot a Marxist plot if it bit them. The U.S. Congress idiots who passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and 1968, and the Nebraska morons who followed with LB 656 and its 1969 sequel, deserve nothing but scorn. They ruined their grandchildren's lives, and their great-grandchildren's too, for a fleeting pat on the back. Burn in hell, all of them, federal and Nebraskan alike. Their civil rights garbage didn't save America, it sold it out. The legislators of the 1960s, too dense to see the fraud, traded their legacy for a lie. And Nebraska? Just a bunch of hasty dupes, too pathetic to even question the script. Their laws weren't compassion, they were cowardice. History won't forgive them, and neither should we.